You started out wanting to make a few small changes to the kitchen, and before you know it, you're heading for a full-scale renovation of the whole house. It's a familiar story. But before you get too far down the planning track, are there some basic things that you need to consider? Architect Darren Jessop has built up a reputation for his innovative approach to major renovations, and Trends asked him for his advice to homeowners about to start a project.
The renovation side of it is quite similar to a new home. As most people know, there are a lot of renovations happening at the moment. It's become quite a thing. What I enjoy about it is you have an existing platform to start with already. You have a canvas, whereas with a new home you have a blank canvas with an existing project, which we have half a dozen on at the moment. You're starting with something that's already there. So you can talk to something straight away, whether it's good, bad, whether you can pull it to pieces, put it back together. So I enjoy that part of it because it's a subject already to look at. And every project is different, so no one job is the same. Even when we come across villas, for example, no one villa is the same. It's orientated differently. Yeah, so I enjoy that part of it. And clients, of course, they're all different. New Zealanders are catching up on the modern way of living. So we used to live in enclosed environments with protecting our couches from the sun. Now we want to open and create flow and modern way of living. New Zealand's actually become quite well respected around the world for its contemporary architecture, as is Australia. If you take places like Europe, you have old buildings and you can't really pull them to pieces. They're historical, and Italy and Europe and France, they're all old buildings. So as an architect, you don't get to work on a lot of contemporary or classical modern renovations. You have to keep the envelope. Something that I should probably mention is the heating we talked about in the original process. We've recently just finished the first passive house in New Zealand. And that's a design that one of my clients who came from Canada came here and realised that New Zealand has no standard for heating and cooling. It has no process, it has no understanding, and we build very badly. So in the last 2 years, the building industry has become worldwide knowledgeable. There's there's the Green Building Council, which has just been established, which I'm a member of. There's the New Zealand Passive Institute, which is all about building quality homes and retaining the heat. The four main components of that design process for passive is airtight, which obviously is an airtight envelope, like a balloon basically. Airflow, which is an HRV unit, which sucks out fresh air from the outside and goes through a heat exchanger and then pumps beautiful warm air into rooms. Thermal bridging, which is when you touch, well, the simplest way of putting it is if the concrete floor is touching the ground and you live in Queenstown, the ice of the heat's going to disappear straight away. So there's a design process that we go through to eliminate that. And then a high insulation solar energy calculation. It's all calculated on a facing north, facing south, lots of glass, no glass walls. The cost of buying a property in New Zealand has probably gone up. Money is easy and they're easy to buy, easy to get. Villas, for example, if I'm using the villa as an example, there are lots of them around, and it's become something that a new build will cost just as much, if not more. So an existing house to buy, it's got character, it's got high ceilings, it has the ability it's a timber framed house, people can get their head around timber framing. Not everyone can get their head around concrete block. So with the existing homes that we have, there is lots of character to play with. Architecturally, you can add new materials to what's known as an existing fabric and get some interesting things going on. There is a point where it's not worth keeping if you're doing more than 60% renovation of a house. It's worth them pulling it down, I've been told. The unless of course it's keeping it for the character or keeping it for the zoning rules. So these are some key points to consider. Is the house already maximised its infringements, for example? Is part of the house you wish to demolish or keep, is it the character part that you wish to then use as the next part to design from? There are elements of a renovation that you would instantly say, this is going to cost more than it should we just demolish it? So we have to advise clients that this is too expensive. Are you willing to keep going? And most of the time, it's an element of, I like the character, we like the house, we like the location, we've researched building and we now want to renovate. We start with client briefing by indicating that the brief they've given us and the type of project scope could cost X, and that's a guess. And then we use a calculation on a square metre basis, which could range anything from, say, 2,500 a square metre up to anything to 4 and beyond, depending on the size of the project. So renovation work will cost more than building new, without giving exact figures. A renovation will cost probably, well, we use 2% more on our structure of consultants, 2% more than building new. So purely because you've got propping up of existing buildings, you've got pulling to pieces, investigating the work, putting it back together, but you haven't actually progressed anything, you've just fixed what was there. So there's all the unknowns, and that's a tricky one for builders to cost. Not a lot of builders like to fix their contract price. Not a lot of architects and consultants like to fix, but it's something you need to do. So we will have to, at some point, give an opinion on what the cost of a project would be. And I use a dollar amount per square metre. And let's say it's $3,000 per square metre to renovate. So if you had a 100 square metre renovation, that's 3,000 a square metre. It's pretty much a guide, because if you took a kitchen, it would be 10 grand a square metre, and a garage would be 1,000 a square metre. So you just bracket the whole thing as an opinion. Yeah. Often I will get a quantity surveyor involved, and he quantifies money. So we'll give him a design and we'll say, here's a plan and here's an idea, but here's another idea. What does this cost and what does that cost? So he's able to then say concrete, for example, is more expensive than timber, and a zinc roof will be more expensive than a corrugated iron roof. So the low end is corrugated iron timber frame, the high end is concrete with a zinc roof. Flat roofs can be expensive, depending on how you monitor the construction and the gutters and the torched on membranes and the product you use. But like any industry, you can get a really high-end quality fixing system, or you can get a low-end quality fixing system. So it's in the detailing. There are obvious products that are more expensive. Timber windows used to be more expensive than aluminium, but now aluminium's picked its game up, and the two are pretty much, you could say, depending on the quality of the timber being used, they're similar. When we think of double glazing versus single glazing, which is not used a lot anymore, it's really only the glass that's the extra increase in cost. It's not the whole joinery component. Disadvantages that you often find the house is, every element of it is not up to building code, it's structurally unsound. There would be more work done to an existing structure just to bring it up to spec, and therefore it would probably be worth demolishing it and rebuilding it in its current state, which we've done quite a bit of. Just, look, this is quicker to take it down and put it back up in its original position, to then get all the framing right, to get the walls in line. So you can do that, and that's probably more cost effective. Yes. I would often, if the expectation of money and time frames and execution, I've often been caught out where a client has said to me, I didn't realise this was going to happen. So not understanding the design and the process and the planning, not everyone can read and understand plans. So it is up to the designer to make sure that my clients are understanding what's involved. There are other consultants apart from architects. They come with costs. You always need a structural engineer. You may need a landscape architect. It's not essential. A survey of the land contours, that's essential. So the mistakes you can make is not having the budget in place and maybe a contingency plan. Renovations will invariably always blow out. So the contingency could be anything from 10% up. I had a client recently that said to me, well, we painted our house white, but now we understand we could have actually experienced other materials, colours, fabrics. So that, I suppose, there's mistakes that architects can make. There's a connection that needs to happen between a designer and a client. And that's the important part, I think, needs to happen at the beginning. Do you gel? Are we understanding each other? Do we catch up on a regular basis? Again, everybody's different, so you need to get on with your designer, and clients need to click. So heating would have to be probably on the top of everyone's list. Yeah. Every time we see a client's brief, it probably has the base things of flow from the living spaces. A lot of homes don't have good flow. Back in, say, 1920, they were designed in different parts of the world in England. So a lot of homes are orientated away from outdoor spaces. So their flow would be one key thing. Outdoor spaces that are covered, outdoor rooms, they're not so much on the top of the list, but we're doing a lot of that. We're opening up a whole wall, going outside, covered, fireplace, swimming pool, and bathrooms. I suppose a lot of bathrooms. So, most homes don't have good bathrooms. So, ripping a house to pieces, putting it back together, good bathroom, good kitchen. They're the key elements. Funnily enough, garaging is not on the top of the list. Yeah. A designer is, if you take an architectural draftsman, for example, they're skilled in doing to a certain level, to a certain amount of work, whereas an architect is actually supposedly skilled in all aspects of design, detailing, many years of doing this type of work, knows all the rules and the pitfalls. Not every designer considers himself covering all bases. Most architects know everything, should know every aspect of architectural moulding, I suppose. It's all the consultants, and that's not to say you couldn't get that with a draftsman, but architects are supposedly experts in their field, as a doctor would be in their field. Yeah, well, I've got a checklist actually, which is interesting. The checklist gives anybody, the idea of what architects and designers need. And the key things would be a written brief, a budget, if there's any existing plans they might have. Councils are now very onto it, and they have a disc you can buy. You can ring up and order a disc, and it has all your information that you have on that property, from engineering plans, plumbing and drainage. And we do have clients that come with picture books. So that's a good start. This is my style, this is my husband's style. Can you make it come together so we're happy? And that's pretty much the standard process. Well, in a short couple of steps, it would be meet. I like you. What is your brief? What do you want? We would come out and have a look at the house, or have a look at photos in our office. Pretty much the client has already seen our website. Our website has lots of examples of our working style, and we don't have one style, so it's important to know you either want a style or you're happy for an open-minded design process. And then understanding the process, which is there's design, concept, there's concept design, and that's when all the ideas come out, and that's the fun part. So the process would be then, to me, that's key, and that's the point where you spend a lot of time. The next part, if you need a resource consent, and a resource consent is a planning approval, it's not a building approval. Not every house needs one. If you break the rules of planning, you might need one. Or if you live in a residential 1 zone, which is heritage planning. And then there's the building consent process. That's the permits to get the job through building consent council and engineering, so you can take it to tender. Well, if you're just doing some minor works, anything to do with plumbing, you need a consent. If you're taking out a small job, which is the bathroom, and if you're pulling pieces out and putting them back in the same spot, you wouldn't need a building consent. If you're taking your kitchen out and putting it back in the same spot, you wouldn't need a building consent. If you're taking a window out and putting it back, but it might turn into a door, but it's the same width, it has the same lintel width, you wouldn't need a building consent. So pretty much anything outside that might generate a building consent. You're taking walls out, it's affecting the structure. I like to use the analogy of a wine box. You know, you have the square things you pull out for the wine. The modern way of doing this is to pull out all the walls in your house, open up a big wall. So if you took the wine box, took out half of those grids, cut a big hole in 2 sides, the box becomes floppy. Same thing with the house. So we have old homes and they have lots of rooms and not a lot of windows. So the modern thing is to cut big holes and remove all the walls to create that flow we talked about. And so once we've received a building consent, the tender process can begin, and that is selecting builders. We invite to builders that we know, maybe 2 on a job, maybe 3, and then there are different types of contracts we need to talk about. One would be an open book contract, where all the costs are given, and then the client just pays for that, plus a small margin. So they see everything. They see the hours the builders have worked. The second one is the fixed contract. It's just one lump sum and you build it for that. And then the third one is a combination of the 2. And architects now are becoming more involved, have to by law, with the licensed building practitioner rules. Came out in March 2012. That's to avoid a lot of the leaky building and also council taking the rap. So designers, architects, engineers, and you can become a licensed building practitioner if you're a builder, say. There's new systems in place which we are having to educate ourselves and new clients that they need to then spend more time, more money on this process. They're the key elements, really. And we talked about the outdoor room thing is becoming more and more. Every design we do now has a connection with the living spaces, outdoor room. We're doing a home at the moment where the swimming pool comes into, it's a wrapped around space. It's a villa actually, where the villa extension wraps around the swimming pool so they can slide doors open and it'll be part of that space. I would say more and more though it's the opening up of massive doors, so the whole wall opens up, so you could have a space of 8 metres wide. We've done one that's 8 metres and all the doors stack back and you go straight outside to an outdoor room, so it feels like you're still outside. But you need the light, so we cut massive holes in for skylights or movable roof type thing. Old homes are usually quite character driven with cornices and high ceilings, so that's a trend, and that's something why a lot of people like to renovate old homes. Home automation is up there. It's like having nice wheels on your car. You don't need it, but it certainly makes the home more functional with audio, Sky TV, not so much security, but lighting control, and you can control rooms and zones through iPads. So a lot of higher end homes that we do, we install iPads recessed into the walls. So, and you don't need a remote control. You can still have one, but they're supposedly idiot proof. Mums can use them, with the kids can use them. So there are complicated ones and there are simple ones. So. And a lot of the homes we do still have a switch. And it may just be one kill switch and it switches everything off. and then you can come back in and just touch a button and it comes back on. It can reset itself to what it was the night before. The other key thing that we like to offer, as well as us, a house is not complete without good landscaping. So we align ourselves with some landscape people, landscape architects, to complete the picture. And the picture is, here's your home, here's a bit of an idea of where landscaping, footpaths, grass, fences, trampolines, swimming pool, the key elements need to be addressed. You've spent all that money on your renovation, there's a master plan, and the master plan will probably generate landscaping and the things that add value is what most of our clients like to see. It is a buzzword at the moment, sustainable. I went to a summit recently and the question was, no one can really define what sustainable is. What is sustainable? A lot of the energy efficient parts of sustainability supposedly don't tick the criteria of what sustainability is. Is sustainability just a warm home, or is it recycling the rainwater off the roof? So there are elements of, there's a thing called Green Star, Home Star, which is a separate UK, now also in New Zealand, it's a rating of how well your building performs. So when we sit down with a client, we're knowledgeable on what could be good for a house. Certainly we're seeing more recycling of water off the roof for everything from flushing toilets, washing clothes, to watering the garden, to using LED lights, which is a low energy source, which is still, they're quite modern, and you really wouldn't know the difference between that and an incandescent nowadays. Probably a better quality of light. So LED lights don't draw a lot of power. Obviously a high amount of insulation in the floor, ceiling and walls, the double glazing aspect, and then also how you can control the heat. So with all that insulation, it's obviously going to get hot. A lot of designers should be able to design for north-facing sun, cold side, flow, public, private. This is the public side of the house, the private side. And I suppose the element of what's the ultimate outcome for this process. Is the ultimate outcome to have a big family home and everyone's got their bathrooms, and does that fit into the budget, or is the process just to give a better flow and then have modern, contemporary or classical fittings? So there's all sorts of things to talk about. Not one subject should be addressed on its own. Well, I'm lucky that we have a diverse range of clientele, ages, as I'm sure most architects would, and they range from straight out of first home buyers through to retirees who are trying to reduce the size of their home. So there's all aspects of that to consider. So for a new home, for a new family, for example, it's really just trying to get the economics right for the next either 10 years is probably the best way of looking at it. If someone wants to sit down and design a house or do a renovation, it's usually budget driven. If it's not budget driven, then it's basically process of this house only has 1 bathroom, 2 bedrooms. We're just about to have a baby, which I've got 2 clients that have given me that brief. We're having a baby in 6 months. Can we make this house family-ish? And we've just purchased it and we only have this much money to spend, but we will look at the master plan. So it's possibly, the key elements are usually just 2 living spaces for children and adults, and enough bedrooms and an outdoor space, because it rains a lot in certain parts of New Zealand. We're quite a tropical country, and having the outdoor space that is covered is important. And that could come in the way of an eave, like a big overhang for a veranda, or it could become an outdoor room. So we've got many examples of that on our website, but it's just which one suits that process best. One that I'm doing today, they've retired They want to move to their beach house, which they don't have a house on it. The kids have left home. They still want a 4-bedroom, multi-functionable space. They have more family functions now than they ever did because the kids have left home. They're entertaining either friends and family at Christmas. So the juxtaposition of that is they want a space that is big enough that they can entertain and have multi-functionable spaces. Not necessarily a lot of bedrooms though, but if people come and stay, they crash. And so there's aspects of that. They're more into the quality of the living spaces opposed to the functionality of just give me 4 bedrooms. I'm not really interested in how they work, as long as there's a big bathroom that everyone can share in, because it won't get used. Once a year it will get used at Christmas. So that's the difference. A family home parked in the city, that'll get used 24/7. If you're semi-retired, you'll have a different brief to consider. Yeah. Certain products come back into the market as a trend, like wallpaper. Fair-faced concrete, that's a trend that's come back into the market. Products, that's a very old product. It's basically old timber used, and then you pull the boxing off and expose those type of things. Exposing services like copper pipes, exposing them, not putting them in the wall. And this is residential or commercial or industrial, but the gibboard is a common product that everybody uses. There are ways to apply things like plaster to that and make it interesting. There's all sorts of products. Naming one particular one is pretty difficult, but architects use a lot of detailing, like cedar slats, for example, applied. So the building's already there, and you already have your waterproofing and your plywood, and then you might put slats on it. It's quite a trend at the moment. You can get electronic push-button drawers. You can touch the drawer and it electronically opens. Touch it again ever so slightly and it pops it back in. So the kitchen process is an industry all on its own. It's almost like going to a high-end car designer. A lot of car designers, I think, have designed products for kitchens and products for the house. The door handles and process, there's so much of an industry for that. And then they can be economic, they can be expensive, they can all look the same, it's great. So there's more and more products coming on the market that we're all becoming more exposed to. Lighting is another one. Lighting's a very interesting one. So I would say that we're more exposed to world products than we ever have been, which is driving the quality of our homes up.
In the next Designer Series video, Celia Visser guides us through today's bathrooms.